Okay, everybody, welcome back. HealthForce Podcast, episode 120. We are discussing meal plans today, and specifically, I'd like to venture into their lack of flexibility and why it's probably not a great option for a lot of people. So, the way I like to start is pretty much just define meal plan, what I'm talking about exactly, so that we're all on the same page. I think that that's a term that's been conflated over the years here, and so people have it confused maybe with just like meal prepping, meal planning, like a dietary outline. So let's clear that confusion up to start this off. I just have a random website. Go to Google, you type in what is meal plan, first website that pops up that I thought would be from a valuable resource and credible one is Gorman Consulting Group. It is Jenna Gorham, rd.com, so registered dietitian. On the website, pretty much says how it works. So our meal plans simplify the planning process, providing you with easy, balanced meals for the week. Each week, you receive a meal plan in your email inbox that includes the meals and snacks for each day and an automated grocery list. Our meal plans are created by a team of registered dietitians, focus on things like stabilizing blood sugars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what a meal plan is essentially a play-by-play script, if you would, as to what you are to eat in order to accomplish a certain goal. Meal plans are technically, or traditionally constructed by registered dietitians with your state. Again, just to refresh everybody, the legalities around talking about diets, creating meal plans is on a state-by-state basis. So you have to check by using good old-fashioned Google to find out the state that you live in, whether that function is restricted to only registered dietitians or can other individuals in the health and fitness space create meal plans for you. But again, it's essentially going to tell you what time of day to eat, what to eat, how much to eat. And then in this case, obviously you receive a grocery list or something thereof so that you know how much food to buy to create your meals. And so it's just a roadmap. It's a playbook or a general script of how you're, actually it's not general, it's very specific about how you're supposed to follow. And that's kind of what leads us into this idea of the lack of flexibility because when these plans are constructed, when a meal plan is constructed and it's given to you, you're supposed to follow it. Like, it's not like, oh, and again, I don't want to classify everything into this bubble, but the vast majority of these meal plans, they are specific for a reason because the person that constructs it accounts for your calories, protein, carbs, fats, and it does all that hard work for you and just gets you what you have to eat in order to be successful. And from a theological standpoint, or theoretical standpoint, it seems that would have benefit, that would make sense, that if you take a human being who's not well-versed in diet, nutrition, and weight loss, they need to lose 30 pounds, and you have somebody that knows that realm give you the plan, you think that would be successful. I also give you, an example too as well with our fitness company. So we don't have any registered dietitians on staff, okay? And we do not construct meal plans for our clientele. In Pennsylvania, it is our legalities are, people can talk nutrition, you just can't claim to be a registered dietitian with the state, essentially. You can't put out fake credentials, which to me makes sense. But I do like the flexibility in Pennsylvania that we have as fitness professionals to kind of talk nutrition somewhat. I do keep it more generic than specific for a variety of reasons. It's not really like a legality thing where I'm afraid we're going to recommend something, somebody do the wrong thing. It's more so, I think it's too rigid, and that's kind of the point of this whole podcast, and I'm going to get into that in a second. But we do use a company called Evolution Nutrition to help us create meal plans and guidelines for our clientele. Our staff in-house will come up with the guidelines, give you estimations for calories, similar to like a calorie calculator would for free online. We try to go a little bit more in depth with that and try to come up with what we think are, is a good calorie goal for that person's activity, lifestyle, etc. And then also we try to account for carbs and fats and proteins and things like that to also give people, a little bit of extra foundational level of support. But when it comes to meal plans, we do not tell clients what to eat, how to eat it, even when to eat it. We don't do that. We might give some tips to help people accomplish that, but it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We don't just come up with a scripted meal plan and give it to every client and say, follow this or else you're not going to have, or else you won't be successful. But luckily for us, Evolution Nutrition, which is a company, again, it's just like a software company that we plug into our app. There's an extension through, all the good old the good old technology realm that we're able to connect that and easily sync that into our app. where we are able to print up and get people grocery lists and a guideline meal plan. Meaning we don't expect clientele to follow it. However, we want to give them a resource so they have something to reference to help them understand. Because for us, really, if we get down to meat and potatoes, where I think the biggest benefit is we can educate a clientele with what is necessary to be successful. If they lean on us entirely, meaning if we do everything for them, like think about, to me, what a meal plan is for nutrition. If we try to come up with something equivalent to that for exercise, it'd be like us picking up their arms and legs and moving it. I know that's a little silly, a little facetious, and it's not exactly an applicable comparison, but I think it's good enough for the purpose of what I'm trying to get at. Meaning, if we do all the work, the client doesn't grow. And so if we spend all this time on the nutrition, on the meal planning, and we try to get them everything that they need to be successful, my fears is that they're not going to learn themselves. And as soon as they stop paying for our service, they're going to revert back to old habits because they don't know any better, because they're no longer paying for our stuff. Or it creates a scenario where they feel constantly relied upon us, which is not a feeling I'm trying to create. I don't want our clients to feel like they could never survive without us. That's not what we're going for here. We're not trying to trap people into our business. So from that standpoint, I do find meal plans to be overrated, inflexible, and at the end of the day, not all that effective. I told some stories, and I'll retell one here briefly, about my personal experience with creating meal plans for people. We had a new client sign up. I explained the methodology about how we help people lose weight. Essentially, we're going to give them a calorie goal. We're going to teach them about some foods, and we want them to have the flexibility and creativity to create their own food intake. Like what you put your likes and preferences, you will learn which foods have higher calories, which ones are lower calories, and it's a process of trial and error, sure. But at the end of the day, we're here to help and support you, but we want you to take the reign of your nutrition. We don't want to be the one telling you what to eat. And his client said, that's no good. I want a specific meal plan. I want it. That's how I've always done it. And, I went against our creed. Essentially I said, sure, I'll make you one. Begrudgingly, I spent probably about an hour and a half doing like a 3-day meal plan for somebody, for this person. I sent it to them. I followed up with them 3 days later. Hey, how'd it go? Response was, I didn't follow it. It's just like, so not only now that I spend 90 minutes doing something for free, I didn't charge extra, and that person didn't even follow anyway. So it's kind of like, what are we doing here, right? And that's just been my experience over and over and over again. Different person, same issue. Somebody might fall for a little bit and they fall off. Somebody might not follow at all, and we just end up in this cycle where we're not having progress. Our progress has by far come from when we have people track calories in an app like MyFitnessPal. We teach them about nutrition. We give them guidelines to follow, AKA don't go over this many calories, try to get this much protein. And then obviously, depending on their lifestyle, we try to maybe give them tips here and there, like, well, I think you might benefit from having more frequent meals of less quantity, or hey, you should try fasting. Like, depending on the person, we try to give recommendations, and essentially together we partner up and create a success story. That's been my personal experience. So I'd also like to take the time here to talk about weight loss intervention studies. I don't have anything pulled up specifically, so by all means, you guys can go to Google right now and type in PubMed and then type in weight loss intervention studies. Practically every single weight loss study that I read that is of the intervention type. So what that means is they take the participants, the subjects, they put them into a controlled environment, like a housing unit, and they essentially give them the food that they are to eat. So that person does not have the ability to consume any additional food outside of what is given to them by the study, and then they obviously have to finish their food. So they're eating the exact amount. So what it does is it allows the people running the study to control specific variables. They know exactly how much calories that person's eating, how many carbs, how much fat, how much protein. They know it all. Whereas the other way that people run dietary weight loss studies is to do recall, meaning we're going to tell you kind of what to eat. Like, we're going to tell you what to eat, but then we need to confirm that you actually ate this or not. And again, a lot of times in that scenario is they're giving a meal plan to a client. They go out on their own and do it for a week. They come back and it's like, oh, how'd you do? And it's like, I followed it 60% and I had McDonald's on Thursday and Dairy Queen on Friday. And so then you're not getting accurate data to actually test what you want to test, which usually relates to calorie totals or a combination of the macronutrients. So with all that being said, these weight loss interventions, they bring people in, they give you all the food that you're ever going to eat. It's essentially a meal plan. Obviously, a lot more high intensity. You can't even go anywhere. You can't get a snack if you feel it. You're only able to eat what they are given to you. And what they find on a regular basis, that's why I said just Google any of them because they're all practically the same, is that in a 6-month window or a 3-month window or a 4-month window, however long that they do this study, sometimes it's 8 weeks, they can produce weight loss in the clients like consistently. Yeah, if somebody comes in and they manipulate the calories down to where they think it should be for this person to lose weight, and they feed them the food that corresponds to that calorie total, the client in the study, in the controlled environment, loses weight. So it's not a question that if I write something on a piece of paper as a meal plan and I give it to you, I say, follow this. If that person did, they would lose weight. So for me, meal planning isn't about effectiveness. They are effective. But again, I'd like to talk about the flexibility of it and the actual outcomes of it, the actual end result outcome. Because in a small window, it's certainly effective. If somebody followed a meal plan for a week, it'll be effective. If they followed it for a month, it's effective. But let's talk about what happens in 6 months. What happens in a year? Are you on a meal plan? And the resounding answer is a typical no. And even when you look at these weight loss intervention studies, they run for, like I said, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 6 months, and they all show weight loss. And then what happens is the 6 months after they leave, that weight loss reverts itself and the person regains the weight back. And in a lot of cases, regain more weight back than they lost. And so at the end of the day, a year later, 2 years later, net for net, the person weighs more than they did before the study. So what's happening is we're not teaching people how to change their lifestyle, how to actually lose weight and keep it off. And for me, that's where the buck stops, because I'm not trying to have people, like, I'm not trying to produce results for people that come into our company that they can lose weight in 8 weeks, and like I get pumped about it, and then, you know, I use it as a testimonial and I put it on my website, and then I get new people in. Like, I'm so much more interested in what happens 12 months from when a person signs up with us and does what we program them to do on a consistent basis, sticks it out, stays with us, makes it part of their lifestyle change, and they actually get the fruitful end result, which is a year later. I mean, they've transformed their habits, and so they're a completely different person, both mentally and physically. And that, for me, is where we're at. So, yeah, cool. Wow. Meal plans can work. They're effective. I just question their flexibility and long-term care for the person because, again, I mean, unless you have people wanting to stay on a meal plan for the rest of their life, which I would imagine is a very, very small number of people that would be willing to do that, it's not a sufficient method to produce long-term outcome. So when we talk about the day-to-day struggles of people on meal plans, okay, and again, you just imagine this: you're given a script, you're expected to follow the script, and obviously a good registered dietitian should change the foods. It shouldn't just be chicken and broccoli for lunch every day of the week. It should change. If they don't, you know, I question their creativity there. That's going to further drive down the adherence to it because people get bored too easily and aren't going to stick to it. So that's first and foremost, is the types of foods that are in a meal plan do not allow creative flexibility, especially around taste. So when you think about meal plans, there's a reason that they don't have a lot of sauce to them or a lot of seasoning or this, that, and the other. And because that's a personal preference. Some people like more salt and pepper than others. Some people like vinegar. Some people like mustard. You know, to be able to try to sequence somebody's personal preference of the extracurricular food items, such as your sauces, your condiments, your seasonings, that is, I mean, again, an impossible job for a registered dietitian or anybody making meal plans. In my opinion, I think that would be extremely exhausting to like get a list of all their preferred taste-enhancing food items and try to work that into their meal plan. So instead, I prefer just to teach them about those things, that mustard's got 0 calories, mustard all day, mustard whatever you want. Mustard's great. A lot of people, salt and pepper. Now, people freak out about salt. I think it's overblown. I think a lot of people can handle salt, and it adds so much taste to your food. Plus, it's a mineral. Like, you need it in your body anyway. So there's a lot to it. But I think, first off, the bland food choices really hampers a meal plan. You got to understand, again, because they don't have the understanding of your preferences, only really you do, they are unable to customize your meal plan to the extent at which it would need to become tasting. It needs to be tasteful, a tasteful food menu for your script. And so what ends up happening is a lot of them look like boiled chicken and broccoli, grilled chicken and broccoli, grilled salmon and broccoli, you know, and then, you know, of course, don't even get me started on the vegetable choices. Inside the vegetable choices, again, endless amounts of vegetables. And so some people will say just like, hey, 1 serving of vegetables, which is pretty good, I suppose. But again, it's just like, the food choices tend to be boring, and it's that specific. It's always like protein, vegetable. And they're really, you know, and then, you know, maybe snacks are like a yogurt or a Greek yogurt or a protein shake. And so, again, I question the ability to continually provide tasty, tasty options for people that should allow them to adhere to the program better. I think we can agree that if a meal plan is tasty, that person has a higher chance of sticking to it. Whereas if they look at it as unsavory or unsatisfying, that should increase their chances of not following the plan, which renders the whole thing useless, right? So that's number one, the tasting of the food without allowing somebody to be creative with adding, vegetables, seasoning, sauces, okay? Next is the amount of repetitive nature to it. And again, I think it's done from a practical standpoint, but when a registered dietitian puts on chicken and broccoli for dinner 4 nights a week, it's not that you have to have chicken and broccoli to be successful. You can swap out those foods for practically an endless variety of foods that will get the job done. But the issue is the amount of work that goes into it. I mean, are you going to be a registered dietitian and customize every single day for forever? That's 365 days of meal planning a year for every single client. And you're going to try to build that custom. It's an impossibility. And so that's where it becomes rigid, where it's so generic that the person following it feels repetitive and feels like they can't venture outside of it. Now, I understand maybe some coaches, trainers, and dietitians would try to coach their clients through that process. And I think that's obviously something that they should do. But then, it almost makes that work with a meal plan kind of counterproductive, because why make it in the first place if you're going to teach them what we teach, which is like guidelines and methods to swap things and to try and experiment and make sure it fits what make sure it fits what we're trying to coach you to do at the end of the day, but we allow you the flexibility to do it. So it's kind of like the same thing as what it ends up being, right? So why do meal plan in the first place? And I don't think it accounts for social settings. So think about what happens on Tuesday when your meal plan is scripted that you're supposed to have salmon and cauliflower for dinner, okay? And all of a sudden you have happy hour to go to after work. Surprise happy hour. Maybe it's somebody's birthday. It's a social setting that you'd like to enjoy. You really would like to enjoy it, but your meal plan doesn't say that. It doesn't account for any alcoholic beverages. So now you're put in a position where you're going to either be turned antisocial by having to turn down these extracurricular events that you'd like to do, but because it's not fitting in your meal plan, you decide to stick to the meal plan and pass on everything else, or just go and get water, or you take an event that should be fun and make it unfun. That's essentially a ramification, I think, of meal plans. The other thing that it actually does is it just lets you go off the script. Like if you just decide, well, screw it, I'm going anyways, and you have 3 drinks, well, now your meal plan doesn't know that, and now it screws up the rest of the day, and you are not taught and coached on how to manipulate that so that it still fits. So, for instance, what we do is if somebody has a surprise happy hour and they're tracking their calories in the app, essentially creates a live update of the calories remaining and their goals remaining. And they are actually, if they go out and have 2 beers and a small serving of French fries or something, they just input that in the calculator and it subtracts off the numbers. Now, that means when they get home for dinner, real dinner at 9 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, maybe it changes their options that they have. So before they had planned on having a protein and maybe a serving of potatoes or carbohydrate because they had more calories and more carbs to fulfill for that day, and then maybe some vegetables in case if they were still hungry. Well, now they go for alcoholic beverages and they have French fries. Now they don't have as many carbs left, maybe they don't have any carbs left, and now their calories are knocked down because they've had alcoholic drinks and fries. So maybe they have to have something like, a protein pudding mix. Maybe they have to have a protein shake, cheese. Maybe it's a very limited what they have left to fit in. But if you teach them that from the get-go, they can then pick and choose and make sure at the end of the day it fits. And obviously, the person's supposed to do it. Somebody could go out to happy hour, have what they want, come home, and still disregard what they have left in there. So it's not like our method's perfect. Someone can still disregard it and still do what they want. It's just, I think we give them a better chance to be successful. So I'm going to talk about what we do, how to add flexibility to your nutrition planning, to your meal planning, and see if there's something that you can take away from today's episode and start incorporating into your life. So what we do is we start with calories. For us, they're the king. I mean, if you look at how to actually produce weight loss in individuals, it comes down to energy balance. And it's energy that you are eating in food versus how much you're expending every day. If you expend more than you're eating, you're going to lose weight. I mean, that's simple as it gets. If you're overeating food and having more energy than you're burning off, you will gain weight. So if we take that core fundamental principle of energy and weight loss, we got to start with calories. And so we try to predict somebody's calorie intake goal to start. Now, it's a prediction from the get-go, just like any other calculator would do online. We have our own little method, but generally, we get you a number based off your current body weight and your goals. And we say, look, for the first week or two, just try to eat this number every day. Use this app, use this piece of equipment, use this tool, and don't go over. Just Get as close to it as you can and don't go over. So don't severely undereat it and definitely don't overeat it. Just try to get as close as you can without going over. And that's where we start, honestly, for 2 weeks. And we kind of let that person experiment. And there's sometimes that they fail. They're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And we don't just leave them out to dry. We obviously coach them through it, but it's a process of them having discovery. They play a role in the discovery of food, the value of energy, the value of calories, and what that means and what that does to them. Okay, so we teach them that first 2 weeks. Then we start to introduce macronutrient goals. You know, we start talking about protein is the first one we talk about. And so it's the same thing. We give them a protein goal. This many grams per day. Get as close as you can to that number. If you go over, that's okay. But you got to try to get there. Try to get at least to this number. And we do that for 2 weeks. We say, look, just try. And it takes a while. Again, people undereat protein. I'm telling you, they undereat protein all the time, like severely, by like 50%. So we're trying to, it's a big change. So it takes time. That's one you might spend a month doing just to get it right. But it's so worth it in the end once you start to learn, again, to eat for yourself and to change your own variables. And then carbs and fat for us is personal preference. Some people do better on high fat diets. Some people do better on higher carb diets. So we just play with those variables a little bit until we get them comfortable eating what they're eating. And again, we kind of leave it to personal preference. So if somebody enjoys more carb heavy foods, then they have to have a lower fat, and vice versa. They like fattier foods or olive oil and avocados and things like that, then we try to lower the carbs. So it's just a balance, and it's as simple as that. And we just have them record and track. In an app that makes it easy. You're talking 10, 15 minutes a day. Okay, MyFitnessPal. Go download it. It's free. And you plug the food in there, scan the label, put the food in, and at the end of the day, it tells you how many calories you had, how many carbs, how many fats, how many proteins. And so it's just a process of just trying to get to your numbers every day without going over, learning what foods may have screwed up your day, made it really hard to get those numbers, take those foods out, put new ones in, and away you go. And it's just an ongoing process. And then obviously there's things like we try to recommend for people who still struggle, eating the wrong things, or they don't feel as energetic as they usually would. We try to manipulate the quantity of meals per day, or we introduce something like fasting. But we help them through, again, with the different variables because they're pretty much endless. But we really want to give people the control by giving them those guideline posts and just saying, hey, let's get after this together, see if we can make it happen. So that's really it. Screw meal plans. They do not provide you flexibility. You're going to be following a script. Percentage of the time, less than 80%, most likely. What do you do when an obstacle comes up if you're not taught about the value of actual nutrition, energy, food, calories, etc.? Are you empowered to make decisions for yourself about how to change that meal plan during a day? What happens when you go to review your food intake against your meal plan with the registered dietitian? Are you scolded? Or you felt like, or you made to feel like since you didn't follow it exactly that you're in trouble? Or are they too lax and they let you get away with too much? And next thing you know, you're not following the meal plan, but they're not also telling you that you're not doing a good job. And now you're stuck in limbo and you're paying for something that's not really even doing anything. So again, I think the answer, simply to wrap this thing up and boil it down, get rid of things that are rigid or tough to follow, which is why I don't recommend like super intense exercise. I mean, people just don't do that for the long term. I'd rather you do something a little lightweight, lower intensity until you get consistent, and then you can start to explore these things. But for me, okay, it's calorie counting in terms of follow a nutritional goal for calories, then start to mess with your protein to get to a certain number, and then make carbs and fat the next bit. And then it's a continuing education process so that if happy hour comes up, you start to understand the value of 2 craft beers or 2 margaritas, and you know what that does to your nutritional numbers. And so you know what an impact you're in for, and you're able to manipulate that, whether it's if it's a pre-planned event, if you know you're going out on the weekend, you can control that earlier in the day, go to the event, consume calories there, and then come home and again, just kind of sputter down. And so that you still hitting your calorie goals. So it's like the biggest thing I think that would make somebody successful. If you're not currently successful, I promise if you follow this little quick guideline, you're going to be successful. Because that's the last part. The last part is doing it for the long haul. If you follow a meal plan for 1 week, or you even follow what I said for 1 week, you're going to fail no matter what happens. I just happen to think the methodology that I am advocating for, way higher chance of you being successful and sticking to it. So if you have any questions, reach out to us on social media. It is Ramsden Elite Fitness on Facebook and Instagram. Our Twitter is RamsdenEF. And of course, we love you listening to the podcast on video, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, the other sites that we share it to, or the audio-only version, which is found on most podcasting platforms. And thank you so much for giving this episode a go. We hope you're able to take away something from nutrition. If you have any comments, again, just reach out to us on Messenger, on any of those social sites to give us your 2 cents. Thank you so much.